We need at our table of awareness the logician, but equally we need the intuitive, we need the mystic.
I almost died. I was allowed to go to the very precipice of death, of life and death, and look over the edge. And I was allowed to behold what was there and allowed to come back. Most people aren't.
When we talk about being aligned with ourself or being aligned with our soul or hearing our higher self, that's really what we're talking about, is being connected to that divine part of ourself, that light-filled part of us that is connected to God energy, that is connected to everybody here and every experience we've ever had.
If more doctors, more professionals can open up to use intuitive gifts in their work, that's really important.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, mediumship, near-death experiences, consciousness, and what it all means. Today, I'm welcoming Happy Ali to the show. And you'll have to listen to the episode to find out if that's his real name. But he is the author of the new book, The Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. And in this episode, we talk about his own spiritual awakening back in 1995, near-death experiences that he's had, his ability to prophetic dream, and how he has opened up to intuition and teaches thousands of people to do the same. So with that, here's today's episode with Happy Ali. Welcome, Happy, to Life, Death, and the Space Between.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I just read your book, The Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom, which is completely speaks my language. So I want to dig into all different parts of this. But before we do that, can you start us with your incredible story of how intuitive you are and some of your very powerful prophetic dreaming experiences, which I feel like could be the whole show, frankly. But can we start there?
Sure. And, I've learned to make it much shorter now. So, I've been intuitive my whole life. My dad used to call it our sixth sense, which is funny. I get my intuitive abilities from my dad's side, the nurturing of it. And then I get my prophetic dreaming from my mom's side. So I just recently realized how lucky I was. And it's not because we have it genetically. It's because it's been nurtured in our family to acknowledge that aspect of us. And one of my favorite stories about discovering what intuition was when I was a teenager, and I was a huge Madonna fan, and I wanted to go to her house. And back then it was so hard to find an address. It's now you can just Google it or pay some, spy software to find someone. And I just had a photo, and I took my mom's car, and I decided I was going to find her house in the Hollywood Hills. Now, Hollywood Hills is a very crowded, windy kind of area. There's a lot of dead ends. There's no rhyme and reason to the streets. And I decided to go up the hill. And as I was going up the hill, I would get to a crossroads, basically, and I would have to make a decision to go right, left, or forward. And I remember checking in and asking my gut, where should I go, right, left, or forward? And I would follow my gut, and I made 0 U-turns. And within a short period of time, I saw her house in front of me, and it matched the photo. And I remember I just, first of all, I was really excited that I was there. Not that right. I could go knock on the door. But then I think it just dawned on me, because I never even thought about the fact that I got there with no address. Mm-hmm. And this is in the 90s, It was just incredible. And something within me was born. And I haven't told this other story. Then still, this is another Madonna story, which is kind of interesting. I decided I was going to meet her no matter what, or just get close to her no matter what. And it's not like now. In the 90s was very different.
Right.
Celebrities were like gods back then. So I went to the Hollywood Bowl, and it's a big, arena. And she was performing with a bunch of other people, and I got this really cheap seat on the top. And I said, I want to be in the front.
Hmm.
And I decided to just walk down. And I remember just having this impulse to just go where I was supposed to go. And there was this huge guard that was standing in front of everyone, not letting them in the front areas. And I looked at him and I said, and somebody else came and said, he doesn't belong down there. And he looked at me and he said, no, I've seen him down there. And he just let me through. And I walked all the way down to the front. Meanwhile, the cameras are on me and I walk across the camera and Madonna comes on for the first time. I look up and I see her. This is all aired live. And I have my first expression of seeing Madonna I'm on camera. Then I end up right in front and I get to touch her. And all the security people kind of guided me there and then ended up sitting in a private booth watching the whole thing and crying basically. And I got to touch her and I was all aired on television. Now, these are like really dumb teenage stories, but I followed something within me. And I have it on video forever and ever and ever. And these were the things that woke something up within me in the very early days that when you want something, if you follow your gut, you'll have it. And it goes hand in hand with manifestation. So, but that was just luck as far as you want to think, we thought about it back then, but I still knew something was special. But later, my prophetic dreams started kicking in like my family's. One night I went to sleep and I was, 30 years old. It was like 2008 and I was told I was going to have a son. And I thought, well, that's not really a possibility because I'm a gay guy. I don't have any money to, and how is that going to happen? And they showed me my lesbian best friend. She was 9 months pregnant and they said, you're having a baby. And I told her, I said, hey, let's go to the hospital. She was in labor. And then her wife comes around from the other side and says, Happy, I got this. And she sat her down, pulled out this baby, handed me this child and said, this is your son, Cyrus. And I held this baby and I started crying because I had never experienced the love of having a child before. And it was the most, I get choked up just thinking about it now. I was crying and I woke up and I called my best friend in the morning and said, hey, we had a baby. It's a boy. She's like, well, we already have a daughter. She's 2 years old. She was my goddaughter. And it's not happening. You will not be the father. That's not part of our plan. And if we have a child, then 6 months later, they came to me and asked me to be the donor. And I said, I won't be the donor. I'll be the father for both children. The one that's already 2 years old and the one that happens. We got to do it turkey baster style, no sex at home. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not forcing anything. I wasn't planning on being a dad. If it's meant to be, it will be. And then sure enough, November 8th, 2009, I became a father of my son, Sky. We didn't love the name Cyrus at the time. And I had my daughter, Faith, because she became my daughter and my goddaughter became my daughter. So that changed the trajectory of my life. But people would argue that was not so much a premonition dream, but a dream that led me to something, to behave, led me to, act on something. But at the same time.
But isn't that where you could argue, like in the quantum space, you create your reality? Like you were shown something and then you made that your reality? Or, yeah.
I think that soul was intending to come to this planet and already set up everything. And my soul and that soul made an agreement. All our souls made an agreement. And then I was the missing link and they had to show me, convince me to do what I had to do, because I believe the soul has a plan for you and you're always either on your soul's path or you're somewhere off of it. And I feel like I was off my soul's path and that was the way, because it led me to go back to school and follow my dreams and path. And where I am now is a direct result of that dream.
But then you had another dream.
Yeah. Yes, which is a sad dream, but it came, ultimately my life is in a good place now. I had a dream in 2014 that my other best friend and my dad died. And I remember burying them and it was not pretty. And I remember later rummaging through their clothes and it was not I had never experienced death like that before. It never hit so close, but it was so real. And then 2.5 months later, I had another dream of a car accident. And that day, my son and my best friend, his mother, died in a car accident. And that was really heartbreaking. But at the same time, there was something very comforting about seeing it in advance, because it was a car accident and you want to change all, say, I should have been there. This should have happened. Like, there's so many what ifs. And the dream made it feel like it was meant to be, but it felt like a cruel joke. So why would you make me have a baby if you were going to take the baby away from me?
And
But
show me it. Like, what is well, in the first dream, did that come true? The dream with your dad?
No, because in the dream, the dad was a representation. So the subconscious speaks to you in symbology, in
Right.
symbols. Now,
Right.
if I had a dream that my son was going to die, I would have literally been holding on to him every single day of every single moment.
Got it. Okay.
You
So
know what I mean?
that was the part that I guess this is helpful for me, because when I was reading, I don't think I made that connection. I thought you had a specific dream that your son was going to die and that your
I did.
the mother
but
of your son was
Yeah,
going
so
to die.
the dreams come in symbols.
Okay.
They have to, especially, they don't really come, nothing. Your subconscious doesn't speak in plain English. Your subconscious speaks in symbology. And the father-son relationship in that dream was my father instead of my son. And the best friend relationship was a different best friend, not that one. Had I known, had I seen them dying, I would have never let them travel that day to go where they were going. So
Right.
there is a reason why things work out the way. Or the morning of, I had an accident dream, but it was Madonna in the front seat looking all glowy and shiny, and there was my old boss in the back seat. So there are symbols of people. And that's why I encourage people to learn about the symbols, because the symbols recur all the time in dreams. And once you learn how your subconscious talks to you, you can get better at it. Now, when my grandma died last year, I had a dream that she was going to die. It was her. And it was very clear. Or when my uncle died, I got the diagnosis. I got the length of time. I always get the length of time. But this time it was my dad again. So my dad has died in my dreams so many times. That poor guy has been killed off so many times.
And he's
But it's
still
always
living.
Yeah, he's still alive. He's like the last ones alive in his family.
He plays a symbol. He represents all family members, apparently, huh?
Related to him or the father paternal side.
So it's not dissimilar in a lot of ways than like medium readings, right? Like the information comes through and you sort of have to decipher it a little bit to understand exactly how the communication is coming across.
Yeah, and you have to practice kind of, or at least journal. So in my book, I encourage journaling, because once you journal enough, and I say color code your events or your emotions in the dreams, and then color code real life events, and then try to match the colors, because going through the details is too hard. And then you find correlations. And then you're like, oh, I had this death dream 2 months ago. And then I had this dream 2 months ago with this lady in it. And then 2 months later, somebody died, for example. Or I had this dream of birth. Birth is really fun. I actually get to see who's pregnant. And that one, I think the death is just to prevent me from being able to try to stop it. And so I get more symbols for birth.
And
like
you don't necessarily know exactly who it's going to be with the
No.
death ones.
No, we just wait it out. The only way I know is like because if my mom's side of the family starts having weird dreams too, then we know it's going to be on her side. So I start freaking out. I wait about a month, because mine's about 2 months in advance, and I start asking people. I'm like, "Has anybody had any weird dreams?" And just to like single it out, try to figure out if it's that side or where it's from. If I can't figure it out, if it's too vague, but we know there's a lady that shows up in my dream, or her husband. Once they come on the 2 month mark or 2.5 month mark, I'm at a funeral.
Wow.
Which sounds awful, but it also shows you that death starts out somewhere else. It's the decision that's made on a spiritual level. And it's not something that just happens here. And it's really important to know death is not death. Because
Right.
I get the chance to talk to the dead after they die through my dreams, or sometimes in my living states. I mean, awake states. And the relationships can really continue on for years if you wanted to.
How do you, with your family, like it sounds like this is very much part of what you do. So you'll have this dream and then you'll talk to your mom and say, have you had any dreams? And you'll kind of go up the lineage and across the lineage to see who else. Like, what do you think that means about, one, have your brains ever been studied to see if there's any part of your brain that's more lit up, that's used more than maybe the average person? And two, I mean, clearly there's some genetic. I always say, like, Michael Jordan's a great basketball player. He was born with skills, and you can practice and make yourself better, right?
Right. I wouldn't even bother getting my brain studied because I know so many other people who have prophetic dreams. I don't think it's exclusive to my family. I think that because in our family we talk about it a lot and we nurture the idea of talking about dreams, then that's how we became the prophetic dreamers. And to be honest with you, I'm the main one that has taken it this far to where I have a time limit, and because I've really decided to work on it. When my other family members would have a death dream, they would just be like, oh no, they would have these very adverse reaction to the death dreams. And they would just be like, or one of them would be like, oh, look, I had a dream. And they would just leave it at that. And we would talk about it. We would bring it up. I decided I was going to make it into a science because I'm a, scientist at heart and a spiritual person at heart. And I had to figure out what was the time limit, what was it? So I researched it and I mastered it. And in all my family members, I'm the only one who's got a timer that we know. There's a 2 and a 2.5 month. Nobody else has a timer.
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
it's
it
not
sounds
because
like you've tracked it. Like you've started to really pay attention.
I track it, I write it down, and I check it, and I check for correlations. So I don't think we're special in that way. I think we nurtured it. And it's because dreaming is something that every single human being does. And we, dismiss it. So the subconscious mind receives about 11 million bits of data internally and externally per second. And we only get to process about 167 bits or so per second. So it deletes about 11 million bits of data. It doesn't delete it. It puts it in your body and stores it for future use if necessary. So you're really not aware of most of the things that's coming at you. And dreams, if they're not important to you, it just deletes it. It just doesn't think. So it has to be something that's important to you. Intuition, dreams and intuition to me are the same thing. Any external information, any information that doesn't originate from the logical mind is intuition for me. And if your brain or your belief system doesn't think that it's relevant or important to your life, it has to delete it. And
it reminds me of Inside Out too. Did you see Inside Out?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait.
Oh my gosh, you have to see it because they have the little guys that are in the brain that go in and they're like, oh, useless information, and they like suck it, and it represents like all these balls that are all the different information that comes in, and at the end of the day, the cleaning crew, while they're sleeping, comes in and like takes out the stuff that they don't need.
And that's fact. That's how life works, because we cannot process too much information. And our world would be shaken up if we get stuff that doesn't match our belief system. So what determines what you receive is your belief system and who you think you are. When I identify as an intuitive or when I identify as a prophetic dreamer, guess what? My subconscious wants to prove me right because it wants me to feel stable in this world. So it keeps showing me more evidence that I am who I think I am. And it needs to do that. Otherwise, I go into the insane asylum.
Right. That's amazing. And I think talk a little bit about subconscious manifestation. Is that what you're referring to here?
So subconscious manifestation is something that I created. That was when I noticed that I was really good at manifesting, and a lot of people would do the exact same thing as I would, and they would not be able to manifest anything.
How do you define manifesting?
Manifestation is just basically your frequency determining what comes into your life. That's all it is. And it's how your frequency makes you align with events. That's all it is. It's not like you're magically taking energy. Well, you are magically taking energy and molding it, but it's really just your timing with the world, and your frequency determines what you interact with. But a lot of people, they can't do it. They just cannot create in their lives. Like I'm living in a house that I shouldn't have been able to afford when I got this house. So I didn't mention that after my son died, he started coming to me in dreams and showing me this other child that I was meant to have. And I was like, heck no. And I didn't have any money. I was a student in school and I was just gotten into UCLA, but he showed me, this is your future. And now I have my twins that are in the other room. They're almost 8 years old and they came out of nowhere. That's manifestation. That's creating with your mind, and also being shown it really helps you believe it. So, but I noticed that a lot of people can't do that. And I realized what was the missing component was the subconscious aspect. Their subconscious was holding them back. Their old programmings, their old belief systems, and what they thought, who they thought they were. It's so easy to look at a guy named Happy who's really good at manifesting and say he can do it. But when it comes to them, they don't believe they can do it. So for my methodology, I had to really tweak beliefs. And you notice in my book, I really talk about beliefs.
But that's, I think, what you're talking. I mean, I'm teaching this course right now, and I'm teaching a lot of what I was reading in your book, which frankly, validated how I think about this. But a lot of what you talk about is frequency. And I think when you're talking about frequency and people I'm like still thumbing through the book as we're talking because I have my notes here and I'm like, okay, wait, where's that page? When you talk about the frequency and you talk about people not believing in yourself tends to be a lower vibrational frequency, right? So when you can move through the blockages like you talked about, then you can raise your frequency, raise the vibration, raise that consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And then you're more in alignment to receive what you want. Is that kind of right?
Yes. When it comes to manifestation, that's yes and a no, because when it comes to creating in your life, you can be really high in a high frequency place because you're happy, you're joyful, you see all the good things in life, but you could still have beliefs in the background that I'm not meant to have this or I'm not meant to do this. And those beliefs won't necessarily drag you down because you're not really thinking about them, but they're wired in your system. So you could be high flying when it comes to your frequency and you'll have a lot of good stuff happening, but it won't be the other stuff that you don't have in your life. It'll just be all the good stuff that you have in your life now and you've gotten used to feeling good about. So you can have a high frequency. Doesn't mean you're going to have all the things. Like I haven't won the lottery yet, because I have certain beliefs about it, but I live a very high frequency life because a part of me is like, okay, I don't want to win the lottery. I do want to win the lottery. There's so many conflicting beliefs about
the people who win the lottery, we know what happens to them typically. So is that what I want in my life?
Yeah. And also like, as this book is selling, like I sold a bunch of copies. It was #1 on Amazon on 4 categories, or it made it back to like my 3 versions of my book, the audio, the Kindle, and the paperback were all in the top 10 last week or this week. And
congratulations.
Just to see that, thank you. It's so exciting that I feel that if I like it secretly, I don't want to at this moment, win the lottery until I've felt these little small successes in my life. And I feel like maybe that would taint it, but I could be absolutely wrong. But these are why beliefs like really do sabotage you, because you could still have the same amount of pleasure with having a ton of money, like, millions and billions in your bank account. But I just love the little pleasures of life. And I don't see success the way other people do. I think success is something that you gotta, like, I love living through stuff and experiencing it and getting the little wins and just getting so excited, because I've noticed the little wins are so much more exciting than the big things you always wanted. And just certain things, if I just having someone come up with this book cover based on reading the book and then me tweaking it for so long, as opposed to just me commission, there were so many things that are small wins that I just felt so successful. And I felt like I love this. I love life, the process of life, more than I love the end results. And that's what teachers teach. But there's a moment where you realize, oh shoot, I finally got the thing that I wanted and it didn't feel as good as I thought. So where was life juicy and fun? And I kind of have to seek that instead.
So how do you recommend with that subconscious programming, if it's subconscious, right? It's our consciousness. How do you recommend we bring that into our awareness so we can address it, or maybe not? Maybe it's there and it's protective, like you said with the lottery, and we don't want to address it. We want it to stay there.
Well, there are certain things that we do really want. For example, if you read this book, you want to be intuitive. You know, if you're reading the Intuition Bible, guess what? You probably want to master some new intuitive plan and parts of you that are dormant. But your belief system might be, I'm not intuitive. I haven't had that in the past. This guy can do it. I can't do it. So if there are stuff that you truly do want and you're not afraid of the unknown, you have to figure out what your beliefs are that are holding you back. Then you have to put a crack. First, you have to create a desire. The desire is like the main thing. I want this thing. Then you figure out what the beliefs are. Then you got to put a crack in their foundation and show your subconscious that that belief is not necessarily true. And then you got to replace the belief with a belief that's stronger than the last one. And then that's the beginning parts of cracking your beliefs. And then, of course, repetition, really allowing yourself to feel how it feels to be that person. And looking back at your life is a really good way. Looking back at those moments when you had good hunches or had that dream. I know you've had prophetic dreams. I know you've had them.
I have, for sure.
I know.
I know I have.
I don't even know you, and I know you've had them.
Yeah.
Everyone has had them. It's just you have to acknowledge, it wasn't a one-off. It wasn't, a coincidence. Then you start to really reevaluate who you are, and you change your identity. And a lot of times, like for me, being a channel, like a channel that speaks, is a weird thing still. But I really want it. But I can see the confliction. Every time I start beginning to channel verbally, I kind of freak out a little bit and pull back a little bit. And then I go back to channeling the way I do, which is through my writing. And my writing, the majority of this book was downloaded to me overnight. I wasn't even planning on writing this book. I was planning on writing a different book. And one night I went to sleep and I woke up with the Intuition Bible. And that's channeled. Yet when people say, "Are you a channel?" I'm like, no.
Right, because it has. So let's talk about the different higher forms of intelligence that you talk about in the book. So we've got the subconscious, the superconscious, the higher self, inner being, soul, spirit guides, guardian angels and guides, deceased loved ones, collectives, interdimensional or multidimensional beings in different star systems, archangels, angels, source, or God.
Yes.
Okay. Ready, set, go.
Okay, so I always say, well, we have access to the entire universe because we are the entire universe. And the tree analogy that I gave is that, we are it's basically the root is God. And then God focuses into creating the physical world is the trunk. And then as it branches out, no pun intended, into creating the vastness and the faceted aspect of reality, it becomes like the archangels and the collectives and all that stuff. And then the physical
it's the tree
aspect,
of life. This looks like the tree of life.
It is, but it didn't come to me as the tree of life. It came to me as a very specific analogy when somebody said, what does it mean that we're all one? And then I have to actually look up the tree. I only know the Kabbalistic version of tree of life. I don't know the any other terminology. I should Google it because I do talk about the tree. But I wrote it as in, and then the leaves are physical bodies that are, seasonal. They come and go. So the leaves are the physical bodies of us that are born and with the expectation to die. But the leaves are the tree. Each perspective of every single leaf is valid. And if you want to understand the whole thing, you go within. And when you go within, you have access to all the different versions of reality and intelligence that's within the tree. And all of these things that you mentioned, the labels that I gave reluctantly as I was writing the book, are different aspects of intelligence that we have access to. And people love labels. I don't love labels because I like to just say, hey, I just need some help. Can you tell me what I can, what I should do? And I don't care where it comes from.
That's how I am too.
But we do have access at the base level is the subconscious. The subconscious is a supercomputer, like an AI version of your life that has all the data that you need. And if you learn to tap into it, you have access to it. Then there's the bridge from the subconscious to the higher self, which I call the superconscious, which is kind of like your subconscious with a little bit more access to the world that has no laws of physics, which it defies time and space. Then there's your higher self aspect of you that it knows what you want to do before you were born and what your intentions are, and doesn't really function on the earth, the time of this dimension. So those are the main ones that you deal with when you go within. And the rest is if you're really just wanting to have some fun in life and you want to start channeling intelligence because you want to have a purpose in life. You can channel collectives, which are souls and like-minded souls that have a very specific agenda and they want to help in a very specific way. Or you can tap into angelic forces that have very specific qualities, like health or wealth or whatever it is that you want, or peace and tranquility and patience, whatever it is. There's energies that have those qualities. Or you want to talk to aliens on other planets. And guess what? They function on the same way as you do. Anybody on any other planet, people are trying to find aliens with a microscope. You want to find them, go within. They're linked to that same tree. And people tune into their frequency. If you can conjure up any frequency, no matter where the frequency lies in this entire universe, multiverse, you can connect with it and you can receive information from it. Doesn't matter what the frequency is. You just have to be able to conjure up the frequency, or at least get in this neutral state where that frequency can meet you somehow.
Right.
So,
and so
go ahead. No, that's it. So basically, depending on what your needs are, but some people just do it out of curiosity. Some people do it out of necessity. And some people have a soul contract. They were supposed to be the representative for this collective when they were born on this planet, and they were going to channel that energy coming through. So I love curiosity more than I love anything else.
Mm-hmm. And how do you personally differentiate, or what do the different energies feel like when they come through for you?
Well, definitely when energy comes through you, you can tell the difference. I mean, I remember when my son, the first time he came through me, or I was able to feel him, I was very distinctly him. I could feel his energy. And I felt him for about a month before I felt his mother. And the first time his mother entered my body, because that's how I communicate. I'm a clairsentient. I feel things. She felt like a whole nother person. And I just recognized her. I was like, oh my God, it's you, and then I was like, I missed you. And then I got so sad. I was like, I want to start crying, but I know as soon as I start crying, you're going to disappear because then my frequency won't match yours. Then I said, I'm sorry. I love you so much. I need to cry because my grief is stronger than my need for this connection. I know you're here. So that was another one. One time I was channeling, receiving information from a collective. They're a very specific collective that I'm connected to. And I didn't know what it was. It was very powerful. It was really strong. And all I had to do was ask. I said, what are you? Are you a single soul? And it was like, no. I could feel the no. Are you a collective? And it was like a strong yes. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you just have to ask to see who you're talking to. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know, because the lines are very blurry.
Yeah.
When the non-physical. And in the physical world, we like to label stuff. I tell people who gives a crap what you're connecting to, as long as it's helpful, it's greater than you, tap into it and then get the information and move on.
Right.
But people need names, they need labels, they need reassurance. Mm-hmm. So, but if you're talking to a dead person, you do want to know who it is.
Right. Usually they also want to make themselves known.
Yeah.
And so what do you feel like? I mean, we've talked a little bit about what gets in the way of our intuition. It sounds like one of the big things is our own subconscious belief about what that is. But I think a lot of people don't even understand what it means to have these intuitive hits or to be intuitive.
Well, first of all, I want to say the intuitive aspect part of you is like this best friend that you can have in your life that knows what's best for you, knows where you've been, knows where you're going, and knows the repercussions of every action that you take. And you can use that as an extra data source, as a source of data when you make decisions in your life. And when you start speaking to your subconscious or your intuitive aspect of you, when you're about to make a decision, you can say, hey, is this a good idea for me? Does this align with my purpose? Or should I watch this show on TV right now? Or watch the news? Or should I get involved in politics today? And you have an extra.
No, and no.
Well, you don't know. Sometimes some
Right.
people, their answer might be yes, because that's in alignment with their soul purpose. So for the majority of us, if it's making you feel horrible, the answer is no. But that's not your decision. That's what I'm saying. So here's a good example. You said
Well, that's my
no.
decision if my intuition is speaking
Right.
to me in that way.
So let's just say that I was asking this question, and I'm talking to somebody wise, smart, educated, and also spiritual like you, right? And I hear what you just said, and you said no, and I internalize it, right? And then I hear somebody else that says, you have to be an advocate. You need to go out and start doing this and all this stuff. So I've got multiple sources of information coming at me of two people I respect so much. That's when it's important to go within and say, hey,
right.
I need to check in. Am I supposed to be doing this or not? And then you get your inner voice. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to follow it, but now you have 3 options to choose from. And that extra option is always so good to have, because it knows what's best for me at this moment. And sometimes crying is the best thing for me, and somebody else might say, don't cry. Like right now, it's the 10-year anniversary of the death of my son. And some days I just want to cry. And someone's like, are you still crying? And I'm like, yeah, today I am. Yes. And I check in and I realize
you might forever be crying.
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah. And then sometimes I will and sometimes I don't. But I got to check in and make sure that this is the best path for me. Is this so having intuitive abilities is like adding a best friend. And if you're completely blinded to intuition, don't worry. Your ethereal body, which is the universe, will show you patterns and signs and things in your life to show you where you're at in your life. And all I care about, to be honest with you, is if I'm on my soul's path or not, if I'm repeating patterns or not, if I should keep thinking what I'm thinking or not. And your inner world or your outer world, which is all connected, will always give you some signal. But you have to decide that there is some signal out there for you to care enough about to decipher. Because if you don't give it airtime, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get information. And most people they'd rather live in survival mode, which is your 5 senses, and not really tap into that extra sense, which is more than one sense,
Yeah. When we are accessing our intuition, how do you suggest framing questions around it so we can really tap in and get the answers that we need?
I don't love predictive questions as much as I like alignment questions. Like, I don't like to, if I meet somebody, I don't want to say, am I going to marry this person? Or as opposed to, is this interaction with this person good for me at this moment? Is this person's intentions pure? So I like to ask questions that are not so predictive, because we are manifestors. And let's say that you get the wrong information, because intuition can be colored really easily. And there's a whole chapter on misinterpretation. If you have an agenda, your intuition will say one thing and you will hear something completely different, because your agenda.
Well, this is why I think people don't trust themselves on some level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I made misinterpretation such a big chapter or important chapter, so people can check off the things that could potentially cause them to misinterpret their inner world or inner information. Because if you check it off, like, for example, if I'm obsessed with someone, guess what? All my intuition, most of it is going to go out the window, because you can have a friend who's like, look, I see all these red flags in this person, and you're just obsessed with that person, and you're like, no, you'll justify every single red flag, and then 2 years later you break up, and the friend's like, I told you so, but then they have to hold you and take care of you,
right. And you're like, my intuition told me this was right,
and well,
that wasn't intuition.
It wasn't intuition. It was your agenda. And it's important to acknowledge that and be aware of it. And there will never be a day when you will always listen to your intuition, even though if it gets really loud. We love to live and we love the drama of life. So we'll always go against our intuition, but it's good to have the option.
How can we use our bodies to help us tap into our intuition?
Oh, that's the easiest thing to do because the gut has its own brain, the heart has its own brain, and all of the subconscious information that I talked about gets stored in the body. So the body is a really good way to tell you what's happening. One of my favorites, a yes or no answer that only like about 75% of the people can do. If you're too logical, you can't do it. And I always ask a yes question that I know the answer to be a yes. And I scan my upper body and see where anything lights up. And then I'll ask like 5 more yes questions and see if the same area lights up. And then I'll ask a no question or 10 no questions and see what area lights up. And I understand that that's how my body communicates with me, with the yeses and nos. Then I'll ask a question I don't know the answer to and see what lights up. And I have done that. Like I was having the equivalent of a happy meltdown. Happy meltdowns basically like somebody else's like really good day. And I needed answers like now. And I sat there and I asked so many questions from my inner world. I said, should I be worried about this right now? Should I be doing this right now? Is this something does this person care about me? Do I really care about them? Is this going to be, and I was asking all these questions and they were just answering yes or no. And it was just traveling back and forth. And I'm not going to tell you where because everybody's location is different. I just taught a workshop last night and, everyone had a different location. And I said, trust your location where your yeses or nos are. And there's always 25% of people who just don't work with that technique. One of my sons can't get it because he's too logical.
Well, it sounds like muscle testing in that way. Or
it's very much like muscle testing.
Yeah, like I do something where I do my fingers like this. I don't know if that's considered the same muscle testing.
Muscle testing too.
Yeah.
It's very much so. And the thing with muscle testing or anything that you do, because I do the leaning forward and back one.
Yes.
And that's muscle testing. But here's the thing, like in the beginning, I always teach people how to just communicate with their subconscious. And then I teach them how to raise their frequency so they can tap into higher frequencies. So then I do the same exact exercise, but I'm tuned into the frequency of my soul so I can ask bigger questions. And use the same
exercise that you do with the scanning your body to tune into your soul.
Absolutely. Same. And those are very simple stuff. And I love the scanning thing because it's very like I don't have to do any physical stuff. I can be on the road driving and I can be like, should I make it, it's really handy. The easier it is and the less tools that you need. Like this is my favorite. It's the pendulum. The pendulum is muscle testing. And if you promise not to lie and not move it
and not do this, right?
Yeah, you just leave it there and you let it move. And then if you're really, and I love to rest my hand on something to make sure that I'm not doing it. And the subconscious mind will move the micro muscles in your fingers to be able to show you the answer. And first you have to figure out what your yes or your no is, and then you do it. But there's so many techniques that are outside of the usual logical mind. And the more curious you are, the more exploring you do. And then the more you master them, the more you have access.
And the more you find the ones that speak to you. Not all of them are going to speak to you.
Yeah, like one of my sons still can't figure out his yes or no's, He's very hot-headed. So even when he's having a meltdown, he can't. He's just, there's nothing happening. And the signs, so he needs universal signs. So he'll stub his toe, smack his head on the wall, and all this bad stuff happens, and he realizes that decision was not good.
The universe throws boulders at him.
All the time. And he's like, why me? I said, because you don't listen to yourself.
Right. Yeah. If people are interested, well, should I ask you the question that I said you were like, ask me on the show?
Sure, whatever you want.
Your name that everyone asks you about.
So my name I was not born with it. My last name was my first name, which is Ali. And I had a near-death experience in 1995 and when I was 17 years old. And one night I thought I was going to die.
Before or after Madonna?
After Madonna. Yeah, okay. After Madonna. I lived alone at that time in the United States by myself. My mom was in Iran. And one night I went to sleep, and without going into too much detail, unless you want me to, but I think we don't have that much time. One night I went to sleep. Go into detail.
We all love near-death experiences on the show.
Well, this was very different because my body didn't go through the death experience. It was an attempted suicide, a failed attempted suicide. I cooked a bunch of food. I cooked a bunch of pills in my spaghetti, because I just wanted the answer. I wanted to die because I noticed everybody had problems at every age, and I wanted to know what comes next and what the meaning of life was. And I just didn't think, I thought, okay, I'm done. I can't deal with this stuff. Let's just go. So I cooked a bunch of pills in my spaghetti. I was about to, I ate most of it. I went to sleep thinking I would never wake up, and just released everything negative and my attachment to the world, which is the most powerful thing you could ever do. But I was doing it because I thought it was done. And then I remember the phone ringing, and it was my mom. And I had enough strength to just push the speaker button. And she said, I had a bad dream all the way across the world that you weren't eating well. And I said, oh, okay. She said, promise you're going to eat well. And I said, okay, I'll eat well. And then I hung up the phone, and I saw this like tiny little bit of spaghetti left. Now, this is the most grossest, bitter spaghetti in the world. And I ate the last bit and kicked my gag reflexes in. And I basically gave myself a natural stomach pump, but I still was under enough, I hadn't absorbed enough to fall asleep and immediately. But when I fell asleep, I was expecting to die. So I had the accidental enlightenment of tapping into something greater and downloading 10 lifetimes worth of information overnight. And I woke up a brand new person. I went to sleep with one single perspective, woke up with about, multiple perspectives. I understood the meaning of life. I understood reincarnation. I understood energy. I understood so much that I never imagined. And it was all because I released all the lower frequency stuff and tapped into something higher. And I had no idea what it meant.
And don't try this at home, people. Don't try this at home.
Ever, because you'll die and you'll have to come back and do it all over again. So this was an accidental thing. And I'm so glad I didn't die. And it's not something that's going to happen, because if you try to do this at home, you could just do it. If you really can let go of that resistance, you can do it without trying to kill yourself. That's the whole point.
Right.
That's all that happened. The physical part, you don't need to be throwing up stuff. The death experience, suicide, is not the answer. It is not the answer, because you'll just like if you get out of a relationship, before you learn your lesson, you got to end up back in the same relationship with another person again and go through it all again, except the next time it's going to be more dramatic. If you try to kill yourself, you come back with just more drama and probably more. So just live it, do it here. But what happened to me was I learned the secret to happiness. And I learned so much. I thought I had died and they'd replaced me with somebody really wise, because I got all this information that I didn't have before. And everyone said I was crazy, but all of a sudden I became the happiest person I knew. And then someone called me happy, and then I wanted it like a tattoo on my life. So I just started introducing myself as happy, and never really identified with my old self again. And I haven't identified with my old self. Anyone that calls me Ali, well, first thing I did was I changed my name legally, but made it my last name so my children would have it, but not tell anyone that. So as far as anyone's concerned, it's Happy Ali, not Ali Happy, because I wanted my kids to have it. And then also I can tell who's a telemarketer, because when they're like, can I speak to Ali? I'm like, he's not here.
Right.
He just died.
And he's not.
Yeah,
right.
He's not there.
Well, and I love that, because it's really about being in the embodiment, like embodying that person in every way. And name is an expression of the embodiment.
Yeah. And some people do it in reverse. They change a name to kind of embody something. Mine happened the other way around. I became a new person, and the label no longer fit. Although it's ironic, because I believe myself to be a starseed, from, and in my name is only Ali, because it was supposed to be Iman, which means faith, and which is my daughter's name. And some old lady dreamt that the prophet, I guess the disciple Ali, which is one of the Muslim key people, came down from a higher area and handed my mother this baby, and they said his name is Ali. So I am still attached to that name. And I told my mom, I think I'm a starseed, and she was like, oh, that makes sense. I'm like, aren't you supposed to freak out, Mom? Like when I said I was gay, you were like, you know, and then I said I was Parsi. She's like, oh, that's why.
I'm all good with that. That's perfectly fine.
She just said it makes sense to her.
Right.
And
Wow.
she's like, you're my son. So that makes perfect sense. So that was interesting. So I learned the secret of life, which was to change your perspective to be happy. And that was it. And I learned that in 95 and then relearned it again later when law of attraction became a thing and realized, oh, shoot, all the stuff I downloaded was pretty darn accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where my name comes from.
I love it. Well, Happy, if people are interested in learning more about your work, where can they find you?
Well, first of all, they can go to happyinsights.net and put their email in and get a free meditation, which I love. But go to my Instagram, Happy Insights Official, and you get a daily dose of me. And I talk about every aspect of life, whether it's about relationships, love, spirituality, and I teach all sorts of stuff. And my link tree is in there, which is Linktree Happy Insights, that has a link to everything that I do, my podcast, my work, and everything is just linked in there. And my courses, I'm starting a group coaching for intuition, which I'm really excited about. I've just been kind of too busy to actually start the course. But people can, if they're on the mailing list, I'll give you an email letting you know when that starts. And it's really fun because what signals to your subconscious more that you want to learn about intuition than dedicating 3 hours a week for 12 weeks and actually spending money on it. That tells your subconscious, I want to learn this. It's important enough for me to put time and money into it. And the subconscious starts saying, all right, then here's some intuitive.
Right. And as I say, like, I think intuition is just finding your way back to yourself in many ways. It's healing back all the ways we've been conditioned not to tap into our intuition, and allows us to tap into it again.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. And I really appreciate it. I think everybody, if you want like a step-by-step guide, the Intuition Bible is out now, right? Just got released. So congratulations. And check it out. It will walk you through how to tap into your intuition. So Happy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.